from shields to shells, and everything in between. This is Sweaty Gamer 1939, and welcome to the channel. It is 1200 BCE, the late Bronze Age, and all that lovable, gritty, bloody warfare. Today I'm playing as Hector of Troy, trying to lead his men to a potential victory against the Mycenaean scum, the Greeks, the Spartans. Yeah, we took your wife. She doesn't want to be with some ugly Spartan king. She wants to be with a real man, a Trojan. These ancient neighbors go head to head, or spear to spear. We're going to settle this on the battlefield right here, right now. Menelaus, being the king in the Spartan Mycenaean army, is quite pissed off that my younger brother Paris had taken his wife Helen back to Troy. This cuckolded Spartan thinks he can come over here and tell us that we can't do what we want. Come and make us try. You threaten my people? You threaten my family? You're dead. I'll drink to your bones tonight at my victory feast. Nobody messes with my brother or my people. The Trojans go beyond the wall to settle the score, man to man, army to army, to show who the superior warriors are. We're not using bows here. We're getting up close and personal, where the metal meets the meat. Watch as I break down this battle between these ancient neighbors on Total War Pharoh dynasties. I will break down the strategies used in melee combat, how to counter attacks from different units, key positions for units to be placed to counter any potential threats, how the natural landscapes are utilized to help secure positions, how weather can affect the battle itself. Sweaty Gamer 1939 breaks it all down. Whatever era, whatever time period, whatever your style, we got it here. Now introductions have been made. Let's start the breakdown. I have the main body of my front lines are swordsmen. The middle of my lines, the center of my lines, are some inexperienced, cheaper troops, but I have Hector of Troy here to be there to shout words of encouragement and make sure that his men are holding and to charge into any gaps that may form if they rout.
Look for the Trojans' weak points!
Let's take a look at Menelaus. There he is, right there. Yeah, we're coming for you, dude. The Spartan king is on his right flank, and his chariot unit is also on his right flank. So when moving my troops, I want to make sure to utilize this mountain as much as possible to use the natural landscape of it to hold the high ground as long as possible as I move my lines. That chariot can pick up speed and take off like a rocket into one of my flanks, so I need to try to stay on the hill as long as possible. So my movements on this hill need to be precise and methodical to minimize the risk. I need to keep my reserves close to my front lines because I don't want that chariot to get in between my lines and cause some damage. I have a folded wing here on my flank, my left flank, because I do have a hidden unit in the woods on top of the hill there that I want to be used during the battle. I want my most experienced units on my wings because they need to hold any type of flanking maneuver that may potentially become apparent during the battle when it unfolds.
We are the future!
Look at the lines here. I have my left flank. I have a spear unit, and on my right flank, I also have a spear unit on the far edge of my line. And I'm just kind of inching my way forward just slowly because I want to make sure that my lines are secure, that their flanks are potentially safe as we move forward towards these Spartans, trying to draw them out. When I play these melee battles, I always want to try to form naturally, like I said, with the landscape. So I want to use elevated positions and just always assess their lines, the enemy lines, and adjust accordingly to try to maximize my benefit and their disadvantage as I move towards them, or as they move towards me. So I moved my reserved shock troops on my right flank here because I am trying to draw them out, because I want their lines to shift, because I still have those hidden units, as you can see way back there in the left of the screen there. That was the hidden unit right there in those woods and those trees. So I want to try to get them to shift the lines so it can maximize the potential chances of me getting that shock troop unit that's hidden inside the tree line there to be able to get their right flank to fold. If that doesn't work, at least the mace unit would be able to pin the enemy in place on their flanks as I move another rear troop in my reserves around the back. I start to develop my right flank a little more because we're starting to reach some flatter ground on that area. So I need to be secure on this flank because that chariot is on that flank. So I need to make sure that everything is secure as we move forward towards this flatter area. So I use my maced shock troops to cover the right flank to be able to charge in potentially on these chariots right here if anything were to occur as we move.
We should teach them what real culture is.
Small adjustments as we go. I'm just moving my back lines while the front lines are slowly inching forward. I am moving more, like I said, on the right flank there, and then I'm slowly moving these troops towards the base of this hill, still trying to keep that angle for my troops that are hidden in that tree line to the right.
Kill all the Mycenaeans!
Coming a little bit closer here. I have, like I said, I have my strongest troops on the wings because I need them to hold the most. The veterans also have the ability to push or ease the lines with their shields to get the enemy to try to potentially move where you want them to move, to allow for a flanking attack to occur, or you can potentially create a gap in the enemy lines and slam some shock troops to charge in and kind of disrupt the lines further.
Make them history!
Look at these spears cresting the hill here. Pretty cool. I'm marching out on the flank here. I want to make sure that my left flank is also secure, so I move my spear unit here to cover this flank, just in case. And now making more small adjustments as we go, moving my veteran sword unit closer to the right flank as we get closer to this Spartan line.
Kill all the Mycenaeans!
I decided to move my mace shock troops on the right flank back towards the more center right flank to make sure that chariot can't do some damage to my boys as we move closer. And I move my lines a little bit closer, just inching towards this flatter area here, this flatter part of the battlefield. Still leaving my left flank a little bit folded. Like I said, I want to skirt this hill and try to get them to commit because I still have those hidden units on the left flank in that tree line.
Death to the Mycenaeans!
Something you'll see that I tactically do since I am getting closer to the Spartan lines is since they do have a highly mobile unit that has horses, I want to make sure that I kind of create almost like a circle when I get closer to the Spartan lines, because I know that the potential threat of a flanking attack occurring abruptly is very possible. So I need to make sure that my lines are kind of almost rounded as I move. So when I move closer to this Spartan line, I kind of create like a circle when my frontline troops are moving forward, and then when the reserve units finally move, it becomes an oval as I inch closer to these lines, and I repeat this process until I get closer and closer to these lines and hopefully get these Spartans to commit to some sort of attack. I always want to try to leave some sort of unit in the center to allow flexibility as I move, because I want to make sure that it can go in and plug up any gaps that may form or any chariots that may get through. I decided to move my spear unit back and trade places with it on the right flank with these swords, because I do want my spears to be available to deal with this chariot threat as we close the gap. Like I said before, look at this circle right here, this circle formation. As we get closer, that's what I'm talking about. As we inch closer to this line, I'm just waiting for the spear unit on the right flank to get in position and create that oval-like movement as we move forward towards the Spartans. I still want to use this hill here, so I angle my lines in a way as I move forward that the hill can still be used by those hidden troops. So if they commit, I can potentially still get that surprise attack on that left flank, their right flank. As we draw closer to these Spartan lines, the terrain is getting flatter, so the potential of that chariot unit being utilized soon is becoming more and more apparent. So I need to make sure that I move carefully, because I don't know when those chariots may take off like a rocket and create chaos in my ranks. So I oval out the main body of my forces, but leave these mace units, these quick shock troops that can charge in and deal with the potential threat of the chariots. Oh, starting to rain. Oh man, the weather. So what's so cool about Total War Pharaoh dynasties is that mud can be a factor on the battlefield. It can form, and when fighting uphill, that would be a nightmare, or vice versa. It's just a nightmare in general, trying to hold shields and somebody's pushing on you, or you're trying to push on them and your feet are just sliding in mud. I do try to keep Hector inside the center of my formations because he does inspire the troops. He helps with the morale during the battle, especially when things get hard on a certain area. You can put your general in a certain location to shout words of encouragement and help keep the urge to rout at bay.
Kill all the Mycenaeans!
I finally moved my Trojan maces, my shock troops, a little bit closer to the main body of my formations because I don't want to overextend and leave them behind where they can potentially get dealt with by that chariot unit. So I still have my spear unit here to deal with that chariot threat when they come in, or if they come in, and I'm going to shift my lines a little bit to the right more to see if I can get them to react, and they do. They shift their lines a little bit more to the left, which I want because I can set up that surprise attack on the left flank, their right flank. So my hidden units are over here in that tree line, and the Spartans are worried about that, so they do leave these axes here to deal with the potential flanking maneuver that may be coming from that area of that hill. So I do circle out my lines here, my formations, because we are drawing closer and closer to the Spartans. So when I move closer to these Spartans, I almost want to do like a slinky type of oval formation. Circle to extend, and then oval it out as I move forward. I am shifting more to the right again to try to get their lines to angle out as well when they move, so it maximizes my chance to utilize those troops that are hidden, regardless if they know they're there or not. So like I said, we're slinking now, we're kind of moving in closer, so we're kind of creating that oval formation. We're ovaling out the units as we draw closer and closer.
Let's spill some Mycenaean blood.
I know this may seem like it's not a lot of action, but trust me, this is going to get super bloody when it finally kicks off. This is why chess was such a popular game in the Middle Ages, because essentially it was this. You were just moving your pawns or moving your pieces to try to get the opponent to react so you could get the desired outcome. Different units do different things, so spear units right here, for example, are very good against cavalry or any chariots. Swords are good because you want them to be up close and personal. Heavier units with bigger shields and more armor to pin the enemy in place or hold them at bay in a certain area as you move another troop around a flank or punch through a certain area. Like, you have the troops ease a certain way to allow for a gap to form, like I stated earlier, and then fill the gap with something, like a, whatever unit you want to utilize. Maybe shove a chariot through that little gap and slam into the lines, or a cavalry unit, some sort of shock troop to try to kind of cause disarray and panic. This is why I made this channel, guys, because I love tactics and warfare throughout the ages, and I am studying it from the Bronze Age all the way to modern warfare and the evolution and how it became where we are today. This channel is here for everybody, guys, whether you're brand new to the strategy games or you just want to learn how they fought and what tactics they used and why. It's all here for us all to benefit from and have fun and just enjoy. I do have a Discord in the links below and a Patreon for those who want to support the channel a little more. I do plan on hosting events in the future, and I do have games like Hell Let Loose and, not just these RTS games, but I do plan on doing these FPS shooter strategy games as well, and I am going to be focusing on Hell Let Loose as well, which is a fantastic game. If you guys haven't played it before, check it out. I do have some clips in my channel that you can check out if you are into World War II themed strategy games or first-person shooters. So my left wing here is a little bit more exposed, my left flank. It doesn't have as much coverage on this side, and the potential for that to collapse is getting greater and greater. But I still want them to commit to the right side, so I keep furthering this angle on the right, shifting my lines ever so slightly to create a better angle for that hidden unit. Since I do know that my left side is going to be a little bit weaker, I do kind of fold my wing in a little bit just to kind of curve it to help deal with that potential threat of being attacked in my flank by those axes that are on the left flank, their right flank. I try to counter this by putting my shock troops that are quick and agile in the back again towards the center of my lines to be able to potentially deal with any breaks that happen on the left flank during the battle.
Let's spill some Mycenaean blood! Make them history!
To reinstate what I said earlier, I move Hector a little bit closer. There he is with his gold armor, his bronze armor, towards the center, the weak center that I have, because I know that those troops are a little bit weaker than most of my troops. They're the most inexperienced, so they need their general close by to help them and encourage them. So I have ovaled out my lines now that we're getting closer. There's the oval formation, as you can see. And we're going to try to get them again to try to draw them out. And Hector is there in the center of my lines. And we're just pushing closer and closer and getting these Spartans a little bit more nervous as we hurl insults at them to try to draw them out. Come on, man. We stole your wife. What are you going to do about it? Do something. Let's go. I shift my spears here on the left flank a little bit closer because I want them to be tight and close by for anything that may come on that left flank.
Make them history! Death to the Mycenaeans!
I slightly shift my shock troops a little bit to the right because I do want more troops in this area to deal with the potential threat of that chariot. Just refining my defenses and formations as I move along to ensure a more stable and defensive position as this battle draws closer and closer to becoming a reality. Finally, these Spartans come to try to get a piece. Let's go. Come on. All right, these Spartans are just going straight for me right here on the front line. They don't want to try to flank around. They want to weaken this area as much as possible and possibly drive into attack, using their chariot as a shock unit to try to disrupt this line on my right flank and possibly try to swing further right to flank around and holding my troops in place as they do so. But I back up my spears here because I want to cover this area. I don't want them to advance, but I also want to charge back in and keep these chariots back at bay if they come in, which they're doing right now. All right, we just got to push them back, get them off. Our boys on the front, there on the right flank. And it looks like more of our lines are starting to form or about to form on our right flank. These Spartans are pushing in. They're using heavy spear units here on my much weaker troops that are in my center line. So that's what I was predicting. They were going to push this center because it is weak, and they're pushing their heavier troops on this area. Looks like they are just pushing heavy, massively hard on this right flank. To try to get it to fold, but I move Hector there closer to the action to inspire the troops and try to yell words of encouragement. I use my shock troops here to rush in and try to deal with some of these chariots that are getting through on the back of the lines here as we try to hold this right flank. I pull back my shock troops, put them on my wing here to help support this right flank. That way they can be ready to charge into any gap that forms that if any of my troops start to waver. Lines are starting to stabilize. Let's check around and see on the left flank here. Still have my veteran swords holding this left flank with my spear unit in reserve. And they are pushing up to my veteran swords on the left flank. Looks like particularly on that left center. They are trying to use the shock troop chariots to try to disrupt the flank, but as you can see, they're starting to get overwhelmed because I keep sending in my shock troops to deal with them when they come in. Just pull them back, resend them, and then just rinse and repeat when this type of stuff happens, especially with cavalry or any type of unit like chariots. Now that those chariots are dealt with, I can move my shock troops on the right flank there, and I can now use them more freely, move them into place, and try to take back my right flank. I send them in here, they start squashing some heads.
Your warriors are wavering.
As predicted, since they did push really hard on this right flank, I do have a line that's starting to collapse. I send in Hector here to go and do some damage and show the men that he is with them and ready to fight to the death. He is with his people and his men. He is not letting them down.
I need a rest.
I notice a gap starting to form here, so I do move in some reserve troops to help deal with this potential break in the lines.
Kill the Mycenaeans!
I move my fresh shock troops into this area to exploit this gap and possibly use it in our favor. I shift my spears from my left flank to the center here to allow more flexibility to be able to deploy them wherever they need to be, either on the left, right flank, middle, whatever I need. And then now finally I'm moving these boys out of the woods, and finally my plan can take place.
My city will fall!
I decide to swing my sword infantry out of this gap, swing them left, and then send in my shock troops in that gap.
Go on!
Now that I've pulled Hector off the line, he can effectively still inspire his men and get some rest and shout orders on the battlefield. He is the quarterback in this army, so he needs to be able to see everything and know what's going on during the battle. These Trojans fought well. They didn't want to let their boys down. They held the line as long as they could. I can't fault them for it. That reserve spear unit in the back of my lines here is now being utilized. I'm pushing them forward towards my center because I know these troops are starting to waver, and they are weaker, of course, because they're not as experienced. So I send in a more experienced unit to deal with them that are fresher and more combat ready. Finally, my troops on my left flank show up, and they're slamming into the right flank of the Spartan lines. I'm trying to squash heads as they come in. Checking on the left flank of the Spartan lines, my right flank. I am starting to gain ground here as the Spartans get weaker and weaker on my right flank. You gotta hand it to Menelaus, he's still in there fighting. Okay, let's pan around on the lines here. We're on the right flank. Let's go check on the left flank. I was able to swing my veteran swords around from the left flank on their right flank and deploy them as kind of like a flanking maneuver. And I slam them in here into the backs of these Spartans and try to disrupt their lines further. I send in Hector here to go and try to mop up on this right flank. He charges in and tries to alleviate the troops that are getting tired on this right flank. I also charge my reserve units in the back here on the right flank to try to drive the last of these Spartans off of my right flank.
Your warriors are wavering.
Let's take a look and see who's wavering. My left center is starting to buckle a little bit, but that was predicted because these troops are not as experienced and not as fit and armored as my veteran troops. Now that I have space on this right flank, I start to swing my right flank out and try to envelop these Spartans.
Trojan scum!
Your warriors have been routed.
These Spartans totally caught off guard with their backs turned and absolute carnage.
We got them!
Yeah, you did. I did a little risky gambling here. My center that was folding, that was starting to rout, is starting to fold a little bit earlier than anticipated, but that's okay. I still have some troops in my reserve that are making their way over there to that part of the lines to help fill in any gaps. Oh man, my Trojan was totally disarmed and beheaded. Oh man, brutal.
Troy cannot win!
Checking out my reserve units. They're making their way to the left flank here because I do need to support these fellas here in the center and on the left flank. Especially now that there are some Spartans that are making their way back to the lines because they have routed and have regained their nerve. I need to make sure that they don't become a threat. A large gap starts to form on my left center. I need to try to plug up the gap or pin the troops in place so they can't maneuver around it. So I send in my veteran swords here. My Trojan left flank is starting to get weaker and weaker. I know this, so plant some reserve troops, my reserve swords here to help plug up any gaps that form. Because it is weaker, I do send Hector here to help boost morale and be ready to help his men when needed.
The enemy general has perished.
As you can hear here, one of my Trojans had the honor of removing King Menelaus's head. I am going to rest that on my mantle as a trophy. His Spartan army is now scattered to the wind and running in fear. This is it for me, guys. This was Sweaty Gamer 1939, and I appreciate you tuning in. From shields to shells, whatever you want, we got it. Next up is Escape from Tarkov. Hit the subscribe button for more and hit the like button if you like it. We'll see you around.